Hey there, good afternoon. Welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show that is dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. So today it's our series again, my favorite albums of 1980, and we'll feature, this is October the 30th, so we'll feature my number 2 album of the month. There was never any doubt that this album was going to be number 2, and I've probably given it away with my shirt. The only little doubt that I had is that number 1 album has been kind of burned out, but this album's been a bit burned out too because I played it so much. Got this album, and we're talking about Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell. Got this album when it came out back in 1980, of course, and I've owned it since then. The first 5 years I had it as an LP. Then when I moved out, I happened to actually see it on cassette, and I bought it. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I bought it on cassette when I first moved out. There's a little record store near where I lived at my new place, and I bought some cassettes there because CDs weren't around yet, and I was listening to it on cassette because I did not have a phono player, and at that point it was still called a record player. I didn't take the one from home, so that's why I didn't take my albums. My sister got them all. I said, there's no point in me carrying these albums around if I don't have anything to play it on, and I had no intention of buying one because money was going to be scarce for a while, so I gave my sister the albums, and I took my cassettes with me, and I did have some cassettes, but I don't think this was one of them. I think that I bought this at the used dealership as a cassette, and I played it until CDs came out, and then in 1988, I think that's the year that the CDs started to come out. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, that year I went to the store and they had a whole whack of stuff on sale. Pretty sure I got this was one of the albums that I got that time, and I've had it since. And I'm not even sure if this is the same CD that I had then. I may have replaced it since then, because I sometimes periodically will replace things that have worn out too much. But either way, either way, I've been listening to this CD for 42 years now. There's never been a time where I haven't listened to it. It's a regular occurrence, and there's a couple periods of time in the 90s where I wasn't really listening to anything, to be honest, except for some music other than rock, which I don't do anymore, at least not that show. But during that period of time I wasn't listening to much rock. Every once in a while I throw something on, but this was definitely one of those albums that has never really kind of faded out of my stretch, and I've been listening to it now for, like I said, 42 years. It's one of my 5 favorite albums of all time. Definitely my favorite Black Sabbath album. I know people will say, well, what about Dio's? What about the Born Again album? Or what about all those Ozzy albums? Yeah, I like them all quite a bit, but this is the album that put Black Sabbath on the map for me, and it's been my favorite, and so it's kind of an emotional attachment to the album. Plus, I really like some of the tracks on here. So we're going to get into that a bit now. So this album marks the beginning of a new era for Black Sabbath, for those of you who have been living on the moon and don't know that. So they parted ways with their original vocalist in 78 or 79, I'm not sure exactly when, and he went solo. We did his album earlier in the month. They then went and found Ronnie James Dio, who had been with Rainbow, so they knew of him, and put him in as the vocalist. He also took over the writing, which I think at that point was being primarily done by Geezer Butler, but he took over the writing. I think there was some serious drinking and drug issues with the 3 members of Sabbath. Geezer and Tony had some drug issues, and Bill Ward, of course, had some drinking issues. So much so that once the album was recorded, he did not actually tour with the band because he had so many issues. And so they signed up Vinny Appice as the drummer for the tour part of this album. So anyways, great album. The last 2 tracks on it I've never been crazy about, but I never disliked them. Never disliked them. They were solid tracks, but they're not the other 6 tracks I've always liked quite a bit more. So we start out with the Neon Nights, the heavy crunching guitar at the beginning. Just this song just crunches its way through. I think Dio makes a strong appearance here. This is a strong launching of this career of this group of guys here, and fantastic song. It's probably my favorite Black Sabbath song. Always has been right at the top or near the top. Maybe gets a little bit of an overkill because I played it so much I kind of burned it a bit, but it's still such a great track. Then you go into the more melancholy song, Children of the Sea. Some nice acoustic bits at the beginning, but followed by some real heavy guitar riffing. Great operatic vocals here by Ronnie James Dio. He's fantastic. For a while it was one of my favorite tracks on the album. She's kind of faded a bit over time too. Lady Evil, there's a song that the 3rd track on the album that has some real heavy bass on it and some real heavy riffing. This is a heavy metal song. If there is any in Black Sabbath, this is one of them, right? I didn't really take to this song too much early on, and then even later on I kind of faded, but there was a period of time there where I liked it quite a bit. It's still a really good track, but never was one of my favorites, but I like it a lot anyways. Then you get Heaven and Hell, which is probably the most well-known song on this album, the title track of the album. They play it in concert. They actually took the name Heaven and Hell when Sabbath was touring with Ozzy and also touring with Dio. They didn't want to confuse it, so they called themselves Heaven and Hell when they were with Dio, and they called themselves Black Sabbath when they were with Ozzy. So a really well-known track. I love it. It's pretty heavy. Dio's voice is, of course, great on it. The only thing about this song that sometimes wears on me a bit is it has this kind of long, kind of rhythmatic part where it's just playing the same beat over and over. It kind of loses me a bit there. But other than that, it's a great song. Then we flip sides when they had sides. This album, of course, is a CD, so it doesn't have any sides. But when they flipped sides on side B on the original album, had Wishing Well, which has always been right up there with Neon Nights and one of my favorite Sabbath songs. I know this is not as well known a song as some of these other ones, but for me it's a deep cut. I've always really liked it. I like the guitar in it. I like the heaviness in it. I like Dio's voice in it. It's one of my favorite songs to sing, actually. One of my Black Sabbath shower songs. I got 2 or 3 of them, and this is one of them. Then you get Die Young, which is kind of a bit different. It starts out kind of quiet and then crunches along. Goes quiet again and crunches along. To me, it's one of the better deep cuts on this album and in Sabbath's repertoire as well. I don't know that they play this song much live, but it's a really good track. Then you got Walk Away, which I'm not sure about this, but I think it was originally the song that they wanted to use as a single. And I could be wrong about that, but that's the feeling I got. I remember something about it when I first got the album. It was on the radio quite a bit. It's a little bit more poppy than the other songs on the album. Like, not poppy by Sabbath standards, not really poppy, but a little bit more commercial sounding than some of the other stuff. And then you got Lonely Is the Word, which is, I always thought this song for some reason was longer. It's only 5:49. I always for some reason thought it was the longest track on the album. I thought it was like 8 minutes or something, but I may be confusing this with something off Master of Reality. There's a song on that that's quite long. It's a very similar song, and I may have confused the two of them, so that's at least possible. But another good track. Ronnie James Dio really brings the beautiful sounds of Sabbath alive here. He just has such an amazing voice. I know he's not really underrated because a lot of people love him, as they should. He's just great. Very strong metal voice, but also very strong operatic voice. So if you're looking for some really powerful heavy metal music with great vocals, great guitar and some heavy bass and drums. This is a great album to start. Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. This is my favorite albums of 1980. My number 2 album from October the 30th. I'll be back tomorrow with the number 1 album. I hope that most of you have probably already guessed what it's going to be. But that's what makes it interesting. You never quite know. But it hasn't showed up yet, and there's no way it's not going to be on this list, right? Okay. So have yourself a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow.